Oh, you know, I know why. Because I didn't down 9.
Got down 9.
Well, it's weird. I didn't tell you, you know.
I never use the phone. I still keep
Hello?
the phone.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
It rang, but I forgot to dial 9, which is weird. It just kept ringing, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, good morning.
Morning.
There's no report from Glenn because he just walked through the door this morning. So,
Oh,
yeah. We can just jump to Ann? Okay.
Okay, so this was our first full week of Cassell, the new finance software, so a lot of the week was spent getting that to work the way they want it to work. So I've had just multiple meetings on various issues. It's not super exciting, but we're getting closer. We got the warrant out, which is a good thing. And now I'm getting caught up on all the accounting entries for Cassell that were not able to be done for several weeks because we didn't have any software. I'm also finishing up the budget translation to switch all the accounts from the old budget to the new budget. And then attached to that schedule, you're gonna see, this is the different rates available or the different products available to help fund that DOT requirement for the manhole covers and all that. So we have a couple choices. We can amortize it longer than 7 years if we want, but obviously the rate keeps going up. So we have different options on how you want to fund that. And then I mentioned last week about the fraud problems in our general checking. So this week has been a lot of shoring up the things that we're doing to prevent that from happening with the positive pay. So it requires an upload of every transaction that we do so that we're able to verify it at the bank and nothing. We're still getting things coming through, but we are catching them. So hopefully the usual process is when they stop getting paid, they move on. So hopefully that will happen. Next week I'll be working on budget books, still on audit. And then hopefully, I believe this has already happened or is about to happen, is the rest of payroll getting transferred into Cassell. So you'll have good budget numbers. Other than that, that's pretty much what I've been doing.
Can I ask a few questions about the schedule that you have here? So do you know what the useful life is on those manhole covers? Because that would kind of determine.
I don't know that. Maybe Glenn does.
Well, in talking with Mike, he's been here probably, well, almost as long as me. I think he's been here for greater than 10 years, and he was just started the last time they did High Street, and they did replace some, but not all of the manhole covers. So the expectation would be the life, would be 10 to 20 years anyway.
Okay.
Obviously, there's, the intent is to replace most, if not all, of the manhole covers, but there may be some that have been replaced more recently for one reason or another, failed, whether they failed or some had some issue that, may not actually need replacement when it comes time to do the, do the work. But the intent at this point is to purchase enough and plan on replacing all of them, the entire length of the project.
Okay. So do we have like a water portion versus wastewater portion?
We will, it's not broken down in
Not yet.
this, but out of that total, we will extract the water portion and the sewer portion, wastewater. The wastewater is significantly more than the water portion, so.
So would this be just a general obligation bond and the water and wastewater pay it?
This is a
Or would
loan.
you,
This is a loan, just a straight loan.
we still need to get approval for funding and stuff,
Right.
so, I just don't know if you need to get 2 separate loans or,
Between sewer and water.
well, you could, is this from Where did you get these amounts?
First National.
First National. So,
Oh, sorry.
no, we would have to, like, do an RFP
Yeah.
for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
I
this
think
is just
this was
a
just
starting.
Yeah, that's just a-
exploratory.
Okay.
Just to give us an idea of what, if we do decide to borrow the money,
Yeah.
as opposed to budgeting,
Perfect.
what that
Yeah.
may look like. So, yeah, if the council decides to move forward with borrowing, then we would put together an RFP and send it out to multiple banks to see who has the lowest rate.
Yep.
And break the project out. I think we'd probably do one, and I don't know, again, because particularly dealing with water, you have the PUC, so we have to do more exploring as to whether the PUC has regulations on how we fund, how we fund this, or how we, what the debt looks like, specifically. Obviously, it'd be a lot cleaner if we could just get one loan, maybe a general obligation bond, and then have the water pay their portion and this, wastewater pay their portion to repay that bond. But again, this is just an idea of what we're looking at for cost and what, lending option would look like as far as the interest rate goes. Because water, honestly, the water portion, and again, we have to break out the numbers, but the water portion at $600 or $700 a piece at, I can't remember exactly how many they had, but it was somewhere in the 50 to 60 valve, replacement neighborhood might be,
Could they fund it out of their own
might even be
budget?
something we can budget.
Because if the water's gonna be paying for any portion of the bond, they're gonna have to go through the PUC, and you have to follow that stuff, and.
Yeah, so
So-
their portion may be affordable enough that we may be able to work it into their budget
Yeah.
without actually borrowing for it. So that's something we'll be taking a closer look at once we
Okay.
have the exact figures. I know that when we had the water main break on High Street, just before I went on vacation, they had issues with several of the valves, trying to isolate the water and shut it off in that location. So the belief is that there's gonna be additional valves along that High Street stretch that haven't been exercised, that are likely to need to be full replacement. So that will increase the cost, but at this point, still very preliminary. But we will need to be making a decision relatively soon, not necessarily on how we're gonna fund it, but the council will need to take a vote. We're actually gonna have to schedule a special meeting, because the DOT needs our approval to move forward by March 13th. So, and again, just getting back in the groove of things, Monday morning I'll be meeting with Public Works, and we'll have finalized the numbers, finalize the exact figures as to what the dollar amount looks like, make sure that this is accurate, and then present that to you folks so that we can schedule a special meeting specifically to address this and for the council to vote, yes, we are going to fund it, and yes, we want the project to move forward, so that I can sign the paperwork and send it back to the DOT before the 13th, so.
And we can figure out the exact source of funding after.
After the fact, yeah, we have plenty of time. I mean, the project, we only have to pay, when I talk to and I have an email that reflects this, we'll have to pay, we won't have to pay for any of this project until FY '25.
Yeah.
So, we can, but again, so for the water portion, if we can work it into the budget, we can budget for that portion of it. The wastewater is far too
Yeah, right.
significant to budget for. But payment for this project won't actually occur until the FY '25. They need our go-ahead so that they can put it out to bid, get the bids in, and get the project scheduled. So that's why the March 13th deadline is on us.
When we do an RFP, you go out to banks, would it go out to the bond bank as well? Is that?
No, the bond bank, ultimately, once we decide what we're doing, they'll do all the paperwork along with our attorney. And then it goes to that's a little bit different because they're funding it at the bond bank, and this would be a bank.
Yeah,
Like
so
a TAN or a
I guess my
BAN or-
question is why not use how does the bond bank tie into here, if at all? If we just It wouldn't be, there'd be
It really
separate.
wouldn't. It'd be like a ban
Okay.
if we did that. As far as I can tell, I don't know, I'm not the goddess of municipal funding.
Yeah, but, yeah, I mean,
I mean, my perspective is it would be separate from the bond bank, but I don't know.
is there, so I
Tammy's,
guess.
Yeah, the
Tammy's
bond bank
probably a-
only issues twice a year, May
Okay.
and November,
Okay, so
so,
we're just off
and
cycle.
you have to kind of. I
Like,
mean,
that's where
There could be
those-
emergency funds available, but it's probably better for us to go to, on the, to local banks, and we usually end up getting some better rates.
Then the bond bank,
Mhm.
okay, yeah.
so the bond bank does like the drinking water, like those big ones?
Yeah.
They
yeah.
do that.
But they won't, okay, that's,
They kind of administer the Fed funds and the state fund
yeah, okay.
fundings.
We also have the 8.6 million
Yeah.
bond, and I posed the question to Woodard and Curran, and they were exploring, Brent was exploring whether we could use those funds to finance this project. He was gonna get back to us. When I spoke to Mike yesterday, he had had subsequent conversations with Brent, and it wasn't looking promising, but we didn't have a hard no on that yet either. So that's another funding source that we're looking into and considering for this project, so that we wouldn't have to go out and borrow additional funds, because that loan is at 1%. So
Yeah.
we're not gonna be able to get that
Yeah,
anywhere
no,
else.
my only concern with that is that we have that big drainage project, and it was like, what, 7.6, so that only leaves us like an extra $1 million, and when they start digging in the ground, it always is an issue, so that's my only concern. with
Yeah,
that.
and that money, I mean, that's really what that money is directed towards, is for drainage to prepare for the Oak Street, DOT
Yeah.
Oak Street project, so. Again, we do have some additional ARPA funds, not our ARPA funds, but ARPA funds that we were given from DEP, that have contributed to the wastewater projects on High Street and Main Street, Water Street for their pump stations. Some of that could be applied to that stormwater project, because some of that money was dedicated to stormwater. So there's potential there, but I think in the end, probably the way to go is gonna be to budget the water portion and put out an RFP to borrow the wastewater portion of High Street. But we'll have more information on that next week, after I've been back and had an opportunity to work with Ann and talk to the Public Works guys, and then finalize these figures, and then put something in front of you next week, and then plan a meeting so that the full council can hear it and vote on it before the 13th.
Just for the record, we ought to be thankful that this is all we're talking about. The state's picking up $2 or $3 million. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a big project.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing that we're only talking about this.
Don't worry, we have other projects. On a happy note, I don't know if you Mike talked about this, but he got the BABA requirement lifted from High Street, which is great.
Yeah, he did mention that we can move forward with the High Street pump station without Buy American.
That is awesome.
We literally made the deadline by a month, so it was perfect.
Gary?
For the record, Gary Foyer, I was wondering whether you had had any ideas of asking DOT for a 5-day extension on that decision. Then you could have it at the regular March meeting instead of the expense and the time and the rush of getting all your information together. 5 days isn't gonna be squat to them. So just a thought.
Yeah, I talked to the utility coordinator, that's as far as my conversation has gone with this. And he was pretty adamant that he really needed
Of course, they
he needed a decision before the 13th, but I can certainly, I have contact information for the project supervisor, so I can have a conversation with that individual about timing and
just
see.
point it out.
Well, I appreciate you seeing if we can have one less meeting, so.
Yeah,
If I
Like
could
you've
just
done this
add-
before, yeah.
Add to that, I hear Mr. Fortier, but let's put the wheels in motion and let's get this show on the road. if the state is gonna come in and do this project, let's do our part and pull the wagon equally and get this done. I don't care if we had 9 special meetings, for $225,000 for, this big project that the state's picking up the bill for, I'll come in at midnight.
We do have, I mean, we do, as you all well know, we do have some special meetings and workshops and things all coming up over the next couple of weeks, so we can fairly efficiently and easily piggyback these onto one of those and just have it before or after those meetings, where everyone's already gonna be here, so. But either way, I'm confident that we can get it done, and the council can have the information to make a decision.
Thank you.
That's all I have, other than like, I want to meet with you when you're done. I wanna show you everything that I have. And that signature that you have for DOT, I think I put that paperwork on your desk,
Okay.
if you're, you know,
There's a pile.
I know. It's the utility, it's that utility guy one.
Okay.
I think the deadline's some first week of March, something like that.
Do you need? I have a couple questions, I think it's related to the warrant. I see biosolids, is that treatment of, sewage processing? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's,
What
it's
goes
for
out.
trucking it, yeah.
Yes, for
What we
trucking.
pay the
Yep.
Canadian company to pick it
Yep.
up and haul it away.
And as far as the, I feel like I should know this, the city's organization, for sewer or water, are they all, they're not a quasi, they're not a district separate from the city, it's all under the umbrella of the city? Or do they have separate,
They're enterprise accounts.
their enterprise accounts? So yeah, they're
So
all,
they
they're
are-
not separate unto themselves.
Right.
The Ellsworth
Right.
Water District bills with sewer district.
Right.
Okay, that's my question.
Different pockets of the.
Yeah,
same
like,
thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, just, I've got clients that are like separate districts for different municipalities. Oftentimes, it's like, like the Rumford, Mexico Water District,
Yes.
because they're serving multiple communities. And
They have separate boards.
they have separate boards, and then the PUC regulations are slightly different, and then, so I'm just going from my education on how the city operates there.
So I just had a few questions in the warrant too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There were
You're the
just
chair,
like a
you can tell me
few,
to shut
I know,
up whenever you want.
no, I cannot. There were a few like late invoices in here, like one dated back to July, one dated back to November. I kind of turned them sideways. I just didn't know if the reasons for that, that's all.
They weren't turned in. I mean, we had one vendor this week that they never use invoice numbers, so I'm not really sure how they do their receivables, but they came forward with all these old invoices that had never been paid because they
Okay.
don't do aging, because they don't have any way to track invoice. So I know that took Ashley some time to research it.
Okay.
But typically, and then of course, we didn't have any accounting for a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, these ones
So-
dated back to like November, and well, there was one from July 2023, and.
It
so-
happens all the time where people are like, oh, you never paid this, and we're like, we've never seen it.
Right.
So, that's why we're, now, I guess going forward, we're gonna start, we're going through the mail. We're processing the mail and finance, because this keeps happening,
Okay,
and the girls get upset when people accuse them of losing
right.
invoices, so we're just gonna do it from the other direction and collect up all the mail, push out all the invoices for approval.
Yeah.
And it's just easier to do it that way.
Okay. Michelle, did you say something?
Yeah, well, because I had someone approach me to tell me that they had heard that the city's credit card was declined for
It was.
non-payment.
No, it wasn't declined for non-payment. Troy tried to book some hotel rooms with some, for the police, and he called me and said the card was declined. I went online, his card was perfectly clear, the account was in good standing, we had $27,000 of the credit. I called him back, I said, try it again, he tried it again, it went through.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? concerns, comments?
Mr. Fortier? The
I-
only one in the audience, do you have anything you
I
wanted to
I had a
add?
question whether we were gonna put, taking over the streetlights in the budget this year. I came across a presentation a number of years ago where right now we'd be up to $400,000 in savings cumulative if we had done it back then.
You mean an LED conversion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bought, own the streetlights and LED conversion. There was a company that we worked with that was gonna finance it. They had it all amortized over 10 years. It was a no-brainer then, and just things have gotten so busy that I think it's been kicked to the back burner. We're not gonna save quite as much if you do it, because we're now saving 26% with the solar project. That has gotta be a bookkeeping nightmare to keep those accounts straight. You're welcome.
Was that you?
I was the negotiator with the rest of the crew. Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's that street light up here at SK Whiting that's blinking. I feel like I'm at a disco. Can we have that light?
Is that a pole mounted or one of our
It's one
decorative?
of the
Our
decorative
decorative
ones.
Yeah, that's the city's problem, not hydros.
Can we just get a
There's
bulb?
2 or 3 out on Main Street. I believe in this year's budget, someone's gonna include replacing the GFI outlets in the decoratives so that we can actually have Christmas lights. I've been consulted on that as far as what needs to be done. So, yeah, I think it's time to put love and care into the decorative lighting on High Street and Main Street this year.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have Public Works look into that blinking one to see if, at nothing else at this point, if we can just
It's a
take,
bulb.
take the bulb
That-
out
that-
or
that-
replace.
yeah, it's a bulb.
And
Jerry, you just climb up on a ladder there and I just,
when I did, a few weeks ago, myself and Jana and Matt met with some downtown, specifically downtown folks, but the chamber was there, representative was there as well. And specifically about some issues, concerns about Main Street and downtown, and those lights that were out was part of that conversation, and the GFI outlets and all were part of the conversation. So we are gonna have an electrician take a look at it, and see what it would cost, but at the same time, we're also a little bit reluctant while we're going through this VPI, Village Partnership, with DOT, because a lot of that type of upgrade and replacement would all be included in that, potentially in that larger plan. So, as we look at what the potential cost is to do some of this maintenance, upkeep and maintenance on on Main Street, we wanna just keep that in mind, that there may be, plans not so in the distant future to do a complete overhaul. So that may, impact the decision moving forward as to how much we invest in the current infrastructure and current status of lighting and what have you down on Main Street. So, but it is part of the conversation. It's likely to be some budgeted funds in the upcoming budget to do some maintenance along the Main Street corridor to some of the lighting and pedestrian crossings and that sort of information, so.
Yeah, you recently had problem with the traffic control device at the lower light. And it turns out to be a corroded electrical connection in one of the junction boxes in the sidewalk.
Yep.
And that is telling Jason, who I talked with on it a couple times, that it's time to start looking. Every one of those light poles has an electrical splice in the base of it. And if they're starting to go, then it's time to start putting some effort into them to keep them.
And I will follow up with Jason. I know he and I have had multiple conversations about an LED conversion. And yeah, I think it's just something that's repeatedly just been put on the back burner. IT's been incredibly busy this last
I bring it up
year.
solely because it's leading into budget.
Yep.
I wouldn't come to you with an off-budget request and January.
Yeah. No, yeah, and again, it's been on the radar the entire 3 years that I've been city manager, and it's just something that we haven't pulled the trigger on, but I think it is something that needs to happen, and there are options, there are multiple, whether we purchase the lights and own them, or whether we work with Versant to make the conversion, and so.
And now's the time to review the ordinance and make sure you have lights where they're required by ordinance, intersections, sharp curves. We did that a number of years ago, went around and looked and took a bunch out. And you can increase my taxes, you can increase the solid waste fees, do whatever you want, but you touch my street light, and there's hell to pay. I found that out,
That and trees.
yeah.
Don't touch my trees. Steve, you have anything?
One request to the city manager, could you provide myself and others, if they wish, the W-2 earnings for all city employees for '23? Both school department and municipal. I've requested that each year before budget.
Okay.
And
I
you
can get the
provided it.
city,
Yep.
I can get the city, but I'll have to send a request to
You did that
school
last year
department.
for me, and that's great, and
Okay.
they complied. It was good to see what that number was.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
The other question that I would have, financially related, would be, we've talked about the manhole covers. Is there something that we are missing that would be good money spent by the city before this major paving project being paid by the state? Is there something out there that we haven't talked about or we should be looking for that $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 needs to be put in before that happens, so we have a good product at the end? I'm not for wasting money, but is there some lingering project out there that we ought to be focused on before this big paving job? I don't know of any.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the only thing, as we've had discussion about is some of the drainage issues. Some of the drainage work that's gonna need to be done. I don't know, it's a 3-year moratorium as opposed to 5, so I don't think it's likely that we're gonna have any of the drainage projects, in the pipeline that would need to be done before 3 years. Cleaning is obviously is kind of the most probable thing that we'll attack first on some of the high street, because I know some of the high street drainage, stormwater drainage basins were some of the ones that were full. So those, and cleaning of those will be probably the first, attack at that, and that's not something that we really need to, that can be done before or after the project. It really doesn't impact, because we're not gonna be digging up or going under. Once we do those cleanings, then we may find, the additional need for pipe replacement and that sort of thing. But outside of that, in the High Street corridor, we do have streetlight issues, but DOT has put together a plan in a separate funding source, that we're aware of. We haven't really gotten much in the way of updates on that, where they're gonna go through and replace all of the traffic lights through the entire corridor. That's not part of this paving project, but that is something that they are working on. And we're hopeful that that will pass and they'll move forward with that project, because that would be a game changer for us to be able to upgrade all of those so that they can communicate and do work more efficiently for traffic flow. In addition to that, is dealing with streetlights. We do have some additional issues, particularly with the Shaw's light and a lack of pedestrian lights and crossing there. That's part of the trail project. So that's something that we're looking at potential options for. Either it's part of the trail project, or it comes through with this DOT project to replace, and those lights all the way through that corridor. So traffic lights, there are some other options, because those would be the major thing that we would want to take care of if we needed to during this project. But unfortunately, when DOT, we were hopeful with DOT that when they went through any of these intersections, they would be required to upgrade and do the upgrades to the traffic signals. But based on my conversations with DOT, the work that they're doing doesn't require them to do that. So, because we were hopeful at the upper light that when they went through that intersection, that they were gonna be forced to make some upgrades to the pedestrian crossing there, because there's some issues with that pedestrian crossing, but, this project doesn't require them to do that, I guess because of the mill and fill, extent as opposed to a more extensive rebuild of the road, so.
I could just say that since I've been on the council, I've fielded a lot of complaints about the roads, and I'm so thankful that the state's coming in and gonna fund this major project in this town. I couldn't be more thankful, and I'm sure the citizens are gonna appreciate that. And I just don't wanna walk by a problem and dig up that new pavement next year. If somebody sees something 3 months from now, we probably ought to be making adjustments for that.
Might I ask, future planning board, are they gonna require the end of Beals Avenue to be shut off for that new housing? And if that is something this council is looking for, is now the time to work with DOT to eliminate, the railroad track crossing of Beals Avenue? This council, last 20 years has talked about that, that multi-unit residential structure going in out beyond. Is now the time to bite the bullet and part of the project closing off that end of Beals Avenue? Just a question, I'm not.
I don't know that I would consider it part of the mill and fill project for High Street. It is one of the options that's being explored for the trail project, and for the continuation of the trail beyond Main Street all the way to the Sunrise Trail. So I know in that project, there's been a lot of planning and conversation about closing Beals Avenue. I certainly can't speak to the planning board regarding that, that development and what their thoughts are on that, but,
As Council Heller is looking ahead, that's why I bring that up, is
That's the stuff I had in my mind. Have we got our eyes open so that if we've got to bite the bullet quickly on something, I'd be sick if we had to dig something up a year into the new pavement. And it happens everywhere, all over the state.
can't for 3 years unless you've got an emergency action.
yeah.
It's closed.
Well,
Yeah, and again, I know I've had some conversations with Adam, Public Works, about potentially additional sidewalk going up Down East Highway, which is something that we may look into doing with this along, because they are paving up Down East Highway as far as Myrick Street. So that's something we may consider, doing during this project or prior to this project going through that area. We are taking a look. Obviously, there's utilities that run under that street. So, we certainly, we just had a water main break, so would it be nice to replace, the entire water main and sewer main, the length of High Street and all of the stormwater infrastructure? Absolutely, but I don't think we're there.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm
but-
talking little things
Yeah.
that
That's
we
water and
could,
sewer, that's not tax money, don't
yeah,
worry.
we could bite, quickly with, I'm talking little things that maybe we haven't discovered yet, that 2 months from now, someone might
Yeah.
see and think about. Not that I wouldn't like to have new infrastructure in the ground, but I don't think that's in our radar.
Yeah, and I have had conversations with Matt in planning specifically, as well as Jana, about this project, so that's on their radar, just in case, I don't know if they have any, new business that's looking in, look in the area that may need to do some work under, subsurface work as far as water lines go, sewer lines, so they're aware of it, so if they, hear of anything or something comes across their desk, they'll know that there is a need for some sort of urgency to get that work done, because that type of work wouldn't necessarily qualify for a moratorium, so that could potentially be, harmful to future development if someone wanted to put a business in and needed to dig up the pavement to get their water or sewer line through.
Isn't there supposed to be a project going up near the bowling alley, that big, so?
Yeah, and I talked to Matt about that, it hasn't come back to the planning board. I think there's still, apparently the developer is also developing property in Hamden or Herman, and they ran into some issues there, so they've had some financial, I don't know if it's financial problems or finances have been tied up dealing with some of their other developments, so they haven't come back with that one. But that is a potential, but I think the 3-year moratorium is probably safe with that project, because it's gonna be a while. Our High Street pump station project is something that we've taken a close look at, because we may need to get into the roadway for that project. So that's something we're working on, Woodard and Curran, on final design. Bid, that's going out to bid now that we've got the Build in America thing taken care of. So as that project moves forward, we'll take a closer look into any potential of getting into the road for that project. Right now, it's no. Right now, the plan is to utilize because the only thing we would need would be a water source for a hose to clean filters and things in the pump station. And the plan right now is to just tap the water line that comes in and feeds Pizza Hut. So we wouldn't have to get into the roadway to do that. And it's just a little, hose. It's not a big draw off of that water line. So that's the plan right now, but that would be right now, that's the only foreseeable issue we could have where we might need to get into the road for that project. But other than that, we don't necessarily have anything on the radar, but I will, on Monday, when Public Works, when we talk more about this project, I'll certainly raise the concern to them and see if they have anything else that's on their radar that may be something we want to address.
Okay. Okay, all right,
Good question.
excellent, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She going?
She's gone.